So recently, PatchVault has been adding more things to the website. This is how it looks right now. If you go to the website, if you're not an admin, I pulled this up before I logged in so you could see. Camp issues or camps are being listed. So if you want to become an admin, you can reach out to Todd Rogers on Facebook, say you want to become an admin. This is the thing. It's a little weird because you actually have to make the camp before you can become an admin of the camp. Okay? So like I was already an admin for the OA part. Okay? So if you want to add a camp, you come into the admin area. I have to find this again. And you can create camps. So I created 4 camps. Okay? So, and this is already an issue that is a little, you've got to think about this. And exactly, not everybody's doing it the same. And I'll show you what I mean. What's the name of the camp? You can't put in. So like our camp, we had 3 Camp Tuscaroras. You cannot put 3 Camp Tuscaroras on PatchVault. And it shows as like a duplicate camp. It won't take multiple Camp Tuscaroras. And that's already one issue. That's because like I put in ours, and what I did is so, and here I'll pull it right up. So when you're making it, I put in Camp Tuscarora, and I put in these little parentheses, and I put in 1924 to 1925, which is when the camp ran. And I put that in as the name because that allowed me to create multiple Camp Tuscaroras. Okay? Now you would say, well, wait a minute. Why the date? Does it have to be the date? Could it be the place? Some people have done the place. So let's look here. If you look, some people are putting in like Camp Rotary. There's a lot of different Camp Rotaries. So what they did is they put in Elmore County, Alabama, and then they put the date. You really don't have to put in the city because on the camp page, it already shows people that. It doesn't actually have to be part of the name, in my opinion, because it shows you, I don't know if you can see that well, but it kind of in this lighter font, it shows you the location of the camp under it. Okay. So let's just stick on the names for a second. There's 3 Camp Tuscaroras from our area that are considered the old Tuscaroras before they had Tuscarora Scout Reservation. So what I did is I put in those in parentheses. I don't think you'll have any duplicate camps of the same name that ran for the exact same years, even multiple across the countries, you know, because there's like a Tuscarora Scout Reservation. Well, there was a Camp Tuscarora or Tuscarora Scout Reservation. I don't know which one they actually used specifically, but there was one in New York, right? So, but it should have run from a different period of time, right? The dates shouldn't match exactly any of these dates for our Camp Tuscarora. So, and I do need to add the date to this one right here because of that one reason. But I think you're going to have to, when you create your camp entry for your camp name, you're going to have to add this date so that way it doesn't cause any conflicts. Would be my thought. Okay, so that's just from the naming standpoint. So you talk to Todd, you say you want to be an admin. You have to create the camp name, and he'll work through that with you. Once the camps are actually created, okay, then he can go in and add you as the admin for each camp. Okay, so you go through and you're added to each camp. This is what that looks like because, you know, so you filled out when the camp was founded, what year it was closed. You can select if it's currently active. So, you know, there'd be no end date on the camp time period. You can select this camp has no known issues. Okay. Now, 2 of our Tuscaroras have no known issues. This is being handled differently by different editors, and I'll show you what's going on. It's a little weird. So give me 1 second and I'll show you that. But you just go through and you put in, for address, you have to fill in the address line or it will not allow you to submit the camp. Now, some of these old camps, we don't know exactly where they were. Or maybe we know, okay, yeah, it was here, but we don't know the street address for that chunk of land, around a lake or whatever. It will, all the ones I did, as long as you put something in for line 1, the city and the state, these starred required lines, it works. So like I just put in, we know it was at Holtz Lake, so I put it at Holtz Lake, Smithfield, North Carolina, and that worked fine for submitting it. But you do have to have something in there for the location. And then there's lots you can add to notes and history and all that. So on this bit here of this camp has no known issues. Coming back to the page that people will see if they're not an editor. You see over here, it says show no known issue camps. So they've been broken apart. PatchVault has broken these apart separately from the main area. So right now, if you click, it just shows you the 2 Camp Tuscaroras. The first 2, the one in Smithfield, the one in Mount Olive. Those are the only 2. Now, I don't know if that's a new feature, something they've added. I really don't know. But some of the camps you see here, it says Camp Cheerful. It says no known examples does exist. So that's what this person did for these 2 camps. Now I don't know. There's event issues listed. I don't really know what it means by no known examples, but it does exist. I mean, to me, it's either one or the other. Now, I understand if in a newspaper article, if it says an emblem was made, well, that's what it says for one of the Tuscaroras. It talks about they were working on an emblem being made for the camp. We know that was a work in progress thing. But if one doesn't exist in any collection known, I would label it personally as a no known issues camp, because we don't know of any issues that actually exist. Now, I don't know how that can be reconciled or how people want to handle that, but I just wanted to show you that right now, one person's handling it this way by listing these kind of no known examples, but maybe something was made and maybe they have some sort of paperwork or something saying it was made. So that's kind of a discussing the name, whether or not you want to label it no known exist or not. So let's look at issues. So if you come in and look at Camp Tuscarora, you have to click to the event issues. And we'll get into a little bit of why in a second, but I just want to show you how it looks. For some reason, it does not sort all of the E's according to date. Okay, I just want to I don't know exactly which ones it throws off. Obviously, it throws off slide and other. Those 2 are not in the correct placement as far as I don't know why it's doing that, but they're not in the correct placement. It should, at least my understanding of things, it should sort. It's almost like this is one category. It's filling in this field, and then all the rest are another category, because the slides are separated by other. So this is treating these 3 as one category to fill in this page, and everything else is another category, because it's sorting by date. But then these aren't in the right place. So that's probably just a little glitch. I don't think that's an intentional thing. I don't know why it would be intentionally done that way. So that might be something to look at. But you have, from here on, everything's in order. So 28, 35, 36, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41. There was nothing made for 42, but this is where the 43 slide should be. And then 44, 45, 46, and so on. Somebody brought up at one point in some discussions patches that were made that don't have a date on them. Well, obviously here they had multiple patches from Tuscarora after the Felds that have no date on them. I listed them as an E patch, and I listed them just like this in order, with the first year of issue, or what I believe is the first year of issue, because quite frankly, there's a few of these that we're a little squirrely on. Well, was it this year or that year? We're not quite sure. But I listed them as best as I could because I wanted to show them in chronological order. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to show the camp patches in the order the camp patches came out. You can't do that in what I would consider a reasonable way if you start splitting things up. I don't like it. And this is where you may disagree with me and you may want to label them differently. And if that's the case, okay. I'm if you're the editor of your camp and you want to split them up, fine. I just don't like it. Let's come up here for a second. When I first was starting to do this and starting to create these listings, I started with the 28 patch. And my first thought was, well, it's a camp patch. It's an issue. That was my thought. It was just, that's the issue they came out with for that year. I didn't really think of it as an event patch. But if I did that, then this would have been an X. So this would have been X1. The neckerchief would have been N1. And this round would have been R1. So it just didn't make a nice chronological display. What you ended up with was it just chopped into all these pieces, because there's really there's a lot of round patches, fine. But in camp issues, there's really no standardization like there is in OA. In OA, you reach a point where it's like, okay, predominantly 99% of issues are going to be a flap, and they're just going to keep on going. Camp issues can be all sorts of things. They can be an X, they can be a round, they can be a neckerchief. I mean, they're just all sorts of things. And so I just feel like you get a really choppy display and by trying to list them as issues. So that's why I did it this way. Let's look. So here they are. This is kind of the admin side of things where you can kind of see the information. And I'll show you real quick. If you come in to edit a listing, this is what it looks like. So you'll see it says Camp Tuscarora. You just select the date. And then you put E, and then it says regular issue. This is kind of the prefixes, what the shape is. So you do that, and then you put the date, and then if there's more than one issued in that year, you would put like -1, -2, that kind of thing. And if there's a variety, you can put the date. I did precise date on all of mine, and I just put June of that year. I'm sure that there are some years where they didn't have summer camp start until July, or I'm sure, but since all the issues that were just summer camp issues, I just put in as the date and June and listed that as the precise date. And then most of this other information you'll just fill in on this every single patch. I will mention it is actually, the function that I use a lot is this feature. This one right here, clone this issue. So if you click that, it will create a replica of what I just showed you for the previous issue you were working on, if you come down to the end. So, if I needed to do another issue after 72, I would hit clone this issue. It would bring up another page of a new issue, and you can just tweak it without having to completely redo everything. It's really good if you're listing issues that are very similar. So like if you're doing neckerchiefs, it saves a lot of times on these because it will carry over the color information referring to like the background of the color. It'll carry over that it's a hemmed border. All of that it'll carry over. So it also carries over things like history of the issue. So if you're listing things from similar years, it to me at least, it really does save a lot of time. The only things you really have to change is whatever's different on the new issue than the previous one in terms of things like color or shape, something like that. And you have to just enter in whatever the new issue is. So it doesn't carry over like EN 1957-1 if I was making the 2. It doesn't carry the name part of the issue over, the identity of it. So you have to re-enter that for every one. But to me at least, it felt like it really sped up creating issues. I will say, when you're doing it, what I did is, so I did all the neckerchiefs at one time because that allowed me to go through them quicker by cloning the issue over and over. Does that make sense? I didn't do like this neckerchief and then this patch and then this neckerchief. You can create them in any order. They'll sort themselves. So I just did all the neckerchiefs at one time. And then I did the odd shaped patches that are like similar design. I did them at one time because that way I could clone them and it made them go faster. So just something I wanted to make sure everyone was aware of because I think it probably gets overlooked a little bit. I've never really used the change similar issues or any of that. I've never really used those. I do want to do this, the add source / attribution. At some point, what would be really nice is to go in and to be able to add the camp brochures from the years. I'd really like to do that. And so that's where I think there's ways to add these sources to PatchVault. I've never really used them, but that's something I would like to do. You can also create issues without having the pictures ready. Okay, so like if you have the patches and you just want to go through and create the issues, this can allow you to split up the work some. So maybe you go through and create the issues and your friend, he's going to scan the patches for you and edit them. I'm just saying that you can actually go through, you don't have to completely finish it. Whenever you get the camp done as much as you're ready for it to be done, okay, maybe you're completely done with it, maybe you're not quite there, you still have a little bit to go. At that point, you can tell Todd to make the camp live, and that's when everybody else will be able to see it, okay? So, something to think about too is how much do you want to list, and do you want to list it from every year? This is an issue that we ran into when we were doing Section OA from North Carolina. Years ago, they basically made the decision that they wanted to list everything that had ever been issued related to the Section OA in North Carolina. And the guys, Bob Gamble and them who were kind of doing the book at the time, I asked them, I said, are you sure you want to do that? And they said, yes, we want to do it. And I said, well, how about this? I'll go through, because they were talking about wanting to do like wristbands and just all this stuff. And so I said, well, what I'll do is I'll go through my collection and I'll add up how many pieces I have that would fit within what you want to do. And then you can decide if this is really something you want to add on to the book. So I went through and added up wristbands and, little token things that they'd given out and, pencils that had the conclave on the side of them and pens. I had over 100 pieces that were not listed in the book. That were these things. And basically the decision was made at that time that a vast, vast majority of those things were not collectible enough that they needed to be listed in a guide. That we all have a finite amount of time, and those items were just not collectible enough to warrant being listed. You're going to have to think about that with camp stuff. If your camp is like our camp, every year in the trading post, there's stuff. There's 10 or 15 things, especially now, and it might be, dog tags, or it might be not camp knives, or it might be, whatever. And you're going to have to think about what of that is worth being listed as far as it has, collectible desirability and people want it. And there might be some that you list if it's something special like an anniversary year. And that's where I'm kind of getting into is so the first year of this camp was 1973. 1973, they made a bunch of stuff. It was the first year of the camp. It was 50th anniversary of the council. So they have like Camp Tuscarora coins. They had Camp Tuscarora medals that could be won by competing at camp. They had a lot of Camp Tuscarora stuff, slides and things like that are kind of more typically collected, but they also had other things. Personally, because it was the first year of the camp, it was an anniversary year, people desire it because that stuff is kind of special for it coming out that year. I'm going to list everything that came out in 1973, even though it's a lot of stuff. I'm not going to do that for every year. I'm just not. It's if people want to find it and collect it, they're more than welcome to do so. But I'm not going to try to catalog all this other pieces for every year. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up as a keep that in mind. It will mean that like this, I'm kind of having to just come up with a list of them, and like my event issues from 1973, there might be a dozen event issues from 1973 because it was that first year. Dave shared his Broad Creek site, which is a great site, by the way.
I just
Yeah,
want to say, when I started out doing that, I basically, since I didn't have any. This is still not, there's no database on this. It's all just HTML and me. But I kind of, without any inherent database to work with, I sort of came up with the basic categories myself of summer camp, winter camp, which was a standard patch that you could get if you camped during the off season. They still run that. Cub camp, which is summer programs that they started having really in the late 80s. And then I just sort of made an other for other things. And I mean, I mentioned in the chat that for most camp collecting, distinguishing, we really just need a different top level hierarchy, because people who collect Camp Durant, they see the 19 or the 2015 patch and the 2016 patch and the 2017 patch. They don't think of it as the odd shape and the round and the triangle or something. It's just shape is not, other than this was a CSP that the camp issued, really. Shape is not something that people use to classify camp patches.
I completely agree. I completely agree. People really don't care. All they care about is what year did it come out in. And that's where I don't know if there could be something added as an issue, whatever letter or whatever designation you want it to be. But if you wanted to add a winter camp, or if you wanted to add, camp, just summer camp, or
Summer
whatever it would
camp,
be.
winter camp, I don't know if you'd want to have a designation for staff or have that be a different kind of thing.
But that's where, with the way the site is built right now, if everybody kind of agreed and said these are the designations we want to use, you could add that here under issue type, and then you could just convert the issues that are listed. So I will say, like, once you have this listing created, even if you create it the way it is right now, if you were going to change this, if we said, okay, we're going to put every one of these is going to be listed as SC for summer camp. If it's just the regular summer camp patch, they're just going to be SC and SC1, SC2, SC3. If that's what we decided, it would be very quick to just come in. You just select the new issue, and then you do the number.
Actually, it would be almost more, you'd want it in category rather than issue type, so that way you could attach a date to it.
Yeah, yeah, and that might be, um, and so that's the thing of, some of that is gonna probably rely on Todd and them have been great, I think, on their willingness to work with people and to adapt as the collectorates looked at things.
Yeah.
And I think that that's going to be something where if more admins start putting loading camp issues on the site, and the decision kind of becomes this is what we really want, um, that might be something that can happen. Michael Holsizer said, "Can one camp entry have multiple councils associated, or do you have to have camp differentiated?" So here's this camp. You see Camp Tuscarora, the dates it was done. You have camp ownership, okay? So you can file the name of the council, when it started, when it ended, and then you can add camp ownership. So you should be able to, if one camp, if there was a council merger, whatever changed, you can have multiple councils on the one camp. Now, I would say personally, if there was a camp that was used by a distinct council, to me, those are different issues than the original council. And I'll give you an example so this is clear. There's a segregated camp from North Carolina called Camp Carlson. It was General Green Council's segregated camp. We know for a fact there's an emblem made that Old Hickory Council sent scouts to that camp, and they made an item for those scouts. It says on it, Old Hickory Council, Camp Carlson. To me, that should be listed as General Green Council's Camp Carlson and the years it was done. And then it should also be listed separately as Old Hickory Council, Camp Carlson, with the 1 year that they sent scouts to that camp, because they're distinct, to me. Now, if it was a fact of, like Camp Greystone being owned by Greensboro Area Council, and that council changing its name to General Green Council, which is what happened, I would be fine with that being one issue, just having two council ownership, if that makes sense.
I mentioned in my comment there that even in the blue book, in the actual printed blue books, they used to list in chronological order, not all the A's, then all the B's, then all the, and so
Yeah.
forth. This is a factor of the computer era. And, since the date is in the database, it should be fairly trivial to add something to sort by that.
Well, and that's certainly, so that's one option. If there was just a sort feature that allowed you to sort by chronological order, there would really be no worry about what letter designation you gave it. You're right, because you could list them all as issues and they'd be split up. But then if you just sorted and it sorted it into chronological order, then it'd make those people happy.